Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to day 2 of the annual conference. If I could have your attention, we are about to begin a very important session here this morning. It is really wonderful to see you all up bright and early this morning after the performances and dinners and other special activities that we had yesterday. If you're just coming in, there's plenty of room here at the front of the room, and fill out some of the round tables that we have down front here. We have the great privilege to hear from one of the nation's leading research management consultants in the field of the performing arts. Alan Brown of WolfBrown, based here in San Francisco, has been a planning partner as we think about our annual conference and about the next iteration of Opera America's strategic plan. Alan is a leading thinker about the patterns of audience behavior, new programs and services that can engage companies more robustly with their communities. He's done research across the United States and frankly around the world, a wonderful report he'll reference from England. He is a leading expert, an opera fan, and a great friend of Opera America's. Please welcome Alan Brown.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mark, and good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. It's a thrill to be here, actually, a huge honor. I enjoyed Traviata last night. Anyone from San Francisco Opera here? Thank you so much. All right. Just to deconstruct the introduction you just got, I started life as a young singer. I was a vocal performance major at the University of Michigan School of Music, which I tell people prepared me for a career in food service. But I had the great pleasure of following my musical love for years and years. And I confess to being a little starstruck. I was in the room yesterday enjoying the front session, and there was someone sitting a few rows in front of me who from behind looked like Cheryl Milnes. I said, oh, it couldn't be. And it is, and I just want to thank you. You were my musical idol for years and years and years. Thank you. I also must shout out to the folks from Michigan Opera Theater. Are you here? Can I see where you are? Thank you. Dr. David D. Chiara and John Fink, when he was there, gave me my first job ever in the arts. In 1984, I was a public relations intern at MOT, and I made the great mistake of getting in a photo that ran in the Detroit Free Press with Wilhelmina Fernandez. The interns should never be in publicity photos. So I'm still trying to get over that. But it was great, and in 1984, as a member of the chorus at Michigan Opera Theater, I had the great honor of sharing the stage with Dame Joan Sutherland in a production of Anna Bolena. Which was a highlight. So I share your love for great music. I believe profoundly in the power of music to transform lives. And it just took me 10 years to figure out that statistics was my destiny and market research was my passion. So here we are today. I'm here to talk about civic impact. Mark yesterday gave a very, very articulate kind of laying down of the gauntlet about civic impact and the new orientation of the field around civic impact. So today my job is to kind of bring that idea alive and so I'm going to take you through it's going to be a little bit of theory here, so kind of grab your coffee and bear with me. We're going to have some fun. I'm going to try to keep this as informal as possible. We're going to keep the lights up. And there are a couple times today where I'm going to turn to you and ask you some questions, and we've got a couple people running around with mics and get some feedback from you, and then about a little more than halfway through, we're going to do an exercise where I'm going to ask you to turn to someone at your table and have a conversation about a hypothetical exercise. So we're going to have a little fun. By the end of it all, I hope we'll have some better sense of what civic impact is. But to start, this is a graph of declining participation rates in the United States population. This is data from the National Endowment for the Arts, Survey of Public Participation in the Arts. You're looking at data from 1982 to 2012. Opera is the pink line at the bottom of the graph. Opera participation rates have fallen from 3% to 2% over 20 years, with gradations in between. And I love showing this graph at the top. It sort of brings a little element of gravitas, especially if you're in the theater field. This is a very sobering picture. And again, this is the National Endowment for the Arts calling people up and say, in the last year, did you go to a live opera? And the percentage of people who said yes, that's the rate you're seeing here. Now, in 2002, for the first time, the NEA did an experiment, and for those people who said, yes, I've been to an opera, they said, what did you go see? My favorite here is Lazia dell'Amore at the top. Now, we're not going to go into this any further. If you're sitting in the audience at Phantom and you think you're at the opera, are you really at the opera? Don't answer that. So, my point being that you can drive a truck through the definition of some of these art forms, including opera, especially classical music. It's interesting, musical theater, people know what that is. But classical music was confused with musical theater. I mean, it's really remarkable. So, when people say they go to opera, we don't know really what they're doing. Here's another sobering point. This is from a survey of college students on 7 university campuses. This commission was studied by the Hopkins Center for the Arts at Dartmouth College and a consortium of university presenters. We explored the musical tastes of college students. The graph is showing you the degree to which college students like different music genres. The rock genres are to the left. The most liked are Indian alternative rock, classic rock, or oldies. Classical music is right behind rock and right ahead of rap or hip hop. Where is opera? The far right. What is that, 4%? I'm getting old, I can't read. Say they strongly like opera. So this is a sobering picture. This is the next generation of opera consumers. And as of right now, their musical tastes are not aligning with our futures. So back to the NEA data. This is one of the way researchers distort data, is they change the scale on graphs. So beware. Always look at the scale. So this is the same data you just looked at on a different scale. This is the opera participation rate, and it's just more granular. So it actually went up a little in 92, then fell precipitously in 2008, and has flatlined 2012. So my real question to you is, where do we go from here? Right? Are we going to go like that? Do opera participation rates slowly fall? Or do we go like that? What would it take? What do we need to do as a field to make this happen? Think about it. Is this our responsibility, or are we merely victims of circumstance? Is it something we can even do something about? Or are we just sort of awash in a sea of external factors that are reshaping demand for opera that we can't do anything about? So I would like to be here in 2025 and see something like this. Now I'm plotting something new here. Let's say opera participation rates raise gradually, but the only way to do that is if more people are actually listening to opera in all settings. And the only way to accomplish that is if more people actually are open to listening to opera, that they like opera. So my point here is that we cannot concern ourselves only with this pink line at the bottom of the graph, which is attendance at live opera. We must concern ourselves with this larger ecology of preference. And I'm going to come back to that word, preference discovery, as a term. So growing demand for live opera requires us, sorry, I went to one slide too fast. There we go. Requires us to take stewardship of the form. We are stewards of the form. We are not just producers of live events. And that, I hope that's not a radical idea. I think most of you believe that in some way. We perhaps don't understand how to act on it. I act on that as best we could. So what will build demand for opera? While many demographic and cultural and technological forces that shape public taste in music are well beyond our control, we cannot just throw our arms in the air and give up. We cannot stand by idly while the external forces further marginalize public interest in opera. If we concern ourselves only with the 2% of the public that buys tickets to live operatic performances, and half of them think they're at Phantom of the Opera, we'll be standing here in 10 years and the number will be 1%. And we can't allow that to happen. So we must ask ourselves, besides attending ticketed performances, what can we do? What are some ways that the public engages with opera? All right, I'll use the phrase owning the opera ecology. This is the question I'm asking. So I'd like to get some shout outs from the floor from you. Can I have my mic travelers running? Position yourselves in the middle of the room. What are some of the ways that the public engages with opera outside of opera houses? I mean, it's obvious. Let's hear it. A couple of them.
MNHD Productions and the other opera productions from around the world.
Okay.
Plus PBS reshows a number of them.
PBS broadcast, so broadcast into digital screenings in movie theaters? Absolutely. The Super Bowl. Oh, Renee Fleming, right? Olympics. What was opera at the Olympics? Yeah. Right. Simulcast into ballparks, for example. Thank you. You know a lot about that, don't you, Marcia?
America's Got Talent.
Okay. Thank you for saying that. I heard a champagne glass smash on the concrete floor. So millions and hundreds of millions of people worldwide are experiencing opera, maybe without even knowing what they're hearing through mass media, through the reality shows. That's a great. This is also happening in dance in a big way. Others, yes?
Alternative venues for regular opera.
Okay, great. That's right. Excellent. Warehouses, clubs, alternative settings. Absolutely. That's great. Yes? Flash mobs, opera flash mobs. Yeah, sure. And in schools, of course. And you forgot the number one venue. I haven't heard it yet.
I was going to say, we do libraries.
In libraries? Excellent. Yeah. In advertisements for British Airways, actually. Lockmay, right. Yeah. Ooh, where do you find opera in video games?
I met a bunch of kids who were playing this game, and there was some scene from Gia.
Someone dies, right? Yeah, right. Opera in video games. That's really interesting.
Weddings.
Oh, that's interesting. YouTube, okay. YouTube is now a dominant venue for music participation, which is fundamentally a visual medium, right? Which is perfect for opera. Okay. 1990, I did a major study of orchestras for the Knight Foundation, and some of you may recall the #1 setting for experiencing classical music was the automobile in that study, and of course the home. So, thank you. So there are many, many ways that people experience the form. And people now curate the music in their lives, like it's like a soundtrack to their lives, and there's music for vacuuming, and music for cooking, and music for everything. I mean, it's amazing, it's so empowering that people can and do change the music in their lives. And the more they do that, the more they learn about it, and the more they value it. So, owning the opera ecology, what we all want is more public support, right? We want to increase participation and gain the support of the public in terms of fundraising, in terms of attendance, in terms of governmental support. And the way we do that is by producing artistically vibrant opera and doing a great job with community engagement, education, all of that stuff. But what we really, the missing link here, and the reason we're here today is this sort of middle layer of civic impact. And I've been working with Mark to sort of develop this understanding of civic impact. And what is it? Why should we care about it? Why is it important? And so I insist that we can't talk about civic impact without talking about artistic vibrancy, right? They are two peas in a pod, right? We cannot have civic impact without great programs, without producing great opera. But yet we are about much more than producing great opera in a certain kind of venue at a certain time. So the civic impact is, what I'm going to do is go through quickly a definition of artistic vibrancy. And then pause, kind of get that on the table, and then afterwards go a little deeper into civic impact, and then explore the two. Okay, so I'm going to move over here. So artistic vibrancy is actually a term, I don't know, have you heard this term before? It actually emanates from Australia. The Australia Council for the Arts, which is a great agency, launched an artistic vibrancy initiative maybe 5 years ago with their major performing arts organizations, trying to build a sense of what is artistic vibrancy. I've been looking at this deeply. Next month, Arts Council England will release this bomb of a research report written by yours truly and one of my colleagues, John Carnwath. We've taken a deep dive into what the research literature says about how individuals are affected by art, aesthetically, socially, intellectually, spiritually, emotionally. And we look at the characteristics of organizations that produce meaningful, impactful experiences. And that's the side of this that I'd like to go into just now. So this will be released on July 21st, I believe, in London. So there are 6 elements of artistic vibrancy that I'll go over with you. And sometimes the terminology changes here. I'll say sometimes creative. I'll say the creative capacity of an arts organization. Artistic vibrancy is a little more focused. Sometimes with Arts Council England, they fund non-arts cultural organizations like botanic gardens, and so we use the word culture to embrace, but with you, I'm going to talk about artistic vibrancy. So, clarity of intent. I cannot emphasize this enough. Open and frank dialogue about artistic matters amongst board and staff is a core element of an opera company's creative capacity. To what ends does your company offer programs? What do you hope to accomplish by offering programs? It might seem self-apparent, but it is not always self-apparent. So the starting point of artistic vibrancy is always clarity and consensus on the desired outcomes of programming. And a clear statement about what risks you're willing to take, indeed, what risks you must take in order to remain true to your artistic commitment. And here's where I think boards can play a role. I was very interested yesterday. I enjoyed Freda Lindemann's welcome remarks. But she said something that caught my ear, which is that the control we have as boards is to hire and fire a general director. And as a consultant, I'm a witness to that sometimes, usually the exit. And she said we should not interfere with artistic decisions and asked a very provocative question, where is the line between advice and interference? And I thought that was provocative. I don't believe that boards are merely fundraising lackeys. I actually believe that board members can play an essential role in establishing policy at a very high level about the objectives of programming. This is not a comfortable place. This is a very sensitive discussion. I get run out of the room by even mentioning this, but I think we have to talk about it. It's acute in the museum field. No, of course, board members would never get involved in artistic decision-making because they don't know the possibilities. But I would argue that the absence of policy at the board level as to programming is where things begin going wrong. And I do think that board members, as ambassadors of the community, as owners of the institution on behalf of the community, have policy oversight of creative output. It's not easy to talk about, but if I were the general director of an opera, I would certainly want to have my board 100% aligned around a set of objectives as to what we were trying to do as a company. So clarity of intent and risk-taking, I hope when we open this up for discussion, you'll heartily disagree with me. The second element of artistic vibrancy is this excellence in curating. It's a healthy process, creative process. And we know so little about this, but the creative process is at the heart of every arts organization, and it's never been studied. It probably never will be studied. No one will ever ask for it, and no funder will probably ever commission it because it's too sensitive. It's the black box. How do we make decisions? And in some theater companies, at least, making programming decisions like choosing a new pope. The College of Cardinals meets behind closed doors, there's a puff of white smoke up the chimney, and the season is announced. Now, I'm not saying that's not a productive artistic planning model. It produces great art in many companies, but there are other artistic planning processes, and the whole point is being aware of what the options are. What kinds of process, what process is right for your organization may not be the process that's right for another organization. So what are the inputs to your creative process? Fundamentally, are the right artistic voices at the table? We always be asked this. I spoke last week at the Orchestra League conference, and it's realized, I dawned, there's a lot of innovation happening. in that field, fitful innovation. And what's happening is administrative staff members of orchestras are becoming guest curators in their own organizations because their music directors don't care about new product lines. And the staff do. So it's amazing what's happening. We are constantly innovating, and we create a process in the absence of one. But I just ask you to think about how healthy is your creative process, and how can you articulate that process and make it healthier? A full pipeline is critical. You know, this is the lifeblood of a creative enterprise. An empty pipeline is the artistic equivalent of bankruptcy. You know, show me your list of artistic projects that you can't wait to do. It is the perfume that intoxicates donors. Show me your pipeline. What is in your pipeline? What can I invest in that will bring your creative dreams into being? Technical proficiency, it goes without saying, but yet we have to say it, is that executing programs at a very high level of artistry is incredibly important, especially in opera. So, but to strive for excellence is a given for me. It's not an option. It's always a red flag when I see the word excellence in a mission statement to me, because it means that actually other conversations that are more important are not happening. But I don't show up to work every day and commit myself to mediocrity. Just as you hopefully don't. We show up every day, we commit ourselves to excellence in management, excellence in government, and excellence in performance. And we work in all sorts of constraints. We all make trade-offs every day. And the real question is, what is your standard of quality? What aspects of quality matter most to you? And what trade-offs are you willing to make? Capacity to engage audience is the fifth aspect of artistic vibrancy, and this speaks to your ability to animate the art, to get people involved in it, to contextualize the art, and help people make meaning from it. A great deal of research points to correlations between patrons' engagement in the art and their frequency of attendance and their likelihood of making a contribution. So those who have deeper experiences, those who engage critically with the artistic work, are more likely to be your supporters. But I would say engaging, some operas are more engaging than others. So engagement is not solely the providence of education, but I believe begins with season planning. I know many of you have significantly beefed up your efforts to engage audiences over the years. I love the CDs I get from the San Francisco Opera, season previews. We're re-looking at program books and not just as kind of souvenirs, but someday I want to do a study of what happens to program books, right? It's fascinating. People collect them for years because they take on the symbolic meaning of the art after it's gone. And I think, and why wouldn't we? What else can we do to bring alive the memory of these experiences? So engaging audiences, the real reason to engage audiences, of course, is because it magnifies the impact of our programs. And I've done 8 years of research on the intrinsic impact of arts experiences. I have data I can show you that proves that people who engage in conversation after artistic experiences report higher impacts. So it's absolutely strategic. Engaging audiences is absolutely strategic. Sending someone home with the experience of a great music is one thing, but sending someone home better able to appreciate music in the future is a long-term investment in their arc of involvement with the form and in the sustainability of your orchestra, your opera. So the sixth and final element is another sensitive one, is always being open to critical feedback. it's never easy. But being open to critical feedback is the hallmark of a professional in any field. Certainly in the management sciences, we know that strong feedback mechanisms at all levels of an organization is associated with adaptability and success. So why anyone in an arts organization would be exempt from evaluation or immune to feedback, I don't know, especially artists, but even board members. The great irony is that most audience members for a cookie will come early and give you all the feedback you could hope for. It seems apparent from the research literature that the process of offering feedback can be a growth experience for the audience member as well. So in other words, feedback done well is training the audience how to have a critical reaction to a work of art. Asking them about what they were feeling, asking them if they were provoked or challenged, asking them if they were exposed to something new, asking them about their sense of connection with others in the audience or with the people they came with. We're teaching people how to have a critical reaction to a work of art. And the more we do that, the better able they are to appreciate the art in the long run and perhaps open their vistas and be more vulnerable to unfamiliar work. Okay, so that is a quick take on artistic vibrancy. And I just wanted to kind of get that out there in case it's helpful to you. You know, maybe someday as a field we would develop a framework or a rubric for artistic vibrancy that would just be something that we talk about so that we're not just auditing ourselves on financial outcomes, but on creative outcomes. After all, we are arts organizations. So I'm going to transition now to civic impact. This is that middle layer, I've got sort of 4 elements of civic impact, but I want to ask you first, before I launch into this, where do you see evidence of civic impact? What does success look like? How do you know you're having civic impact? All right, let's see some hands and get some comments. Over here.
Community awareness of your existence and what you're doing and what you've done recently and what's coming up.
Community awareness as measured, as not measured.
As measured perhaps in the amount of press and the breadth of press that put something out about you.
Great.
Not just paid adverts, but reviews and recommendations, and this is the hot thing to be doing in the coming month, those kinds of things.
Great. Yes, sir.
Being an unprompted part of the conversation amongst business and government leaders.
There you go. Having a seat at the table around civic discourse. Absolutely. That's great. Yes?
At Opera Memphis, we have a file of tweets, Instagrams, all photos that have either the hashtag #Choose901, that being our area code, or I Love Memphis. And those we share or forward on to politicians, Convention and Visitors Bureau, all the groups that are trying to build the creative class in Memphis, because it shows that people have valued the experience they've had with us enough to comment on it online.
Great, great. Thank you. Other comments? Evidence of civic impact. Let's go to the over here and then the back of the room. Yes.
Personal letters saying how much something changed their lives or changed their lives of their family.
Excellent. Unsolicited illustrations of impact. That's great. Yes.
This past year, the mayor of the city of West Palm Beach in Florida chose to include opera as part of her State of the City address, an annual address.
Fantastic. That is civic impact in spades. Great. Any other? There's a hand.
Awareness by school children of the existence of the company and of opera.
Great. Sir?
sometimes simply sort of incongruous, visible evidence of the artistic organizations out in the public. Those of you who lived in New York a long time, there used to be a poster. I don't even remember what it was for, but it was of a New York City bus with the door open and this ballerina doing a grand jeté out the door. And there was something so incongruous about mixing daily city life with art. And I think it made everybody sort of conscious, oh yeah, there's a ballet company or something. That sort of thing that suddenly piques somebody's awareness in the public domain.
Great. Over here and then up front.
When opera companies like ours recently in Omaha are invited by the alternative and indie rock music scene to join with them in musical collaborations and reach out to audiences that previously we could not have touched other than social media without major budgets and things.
Great. Can we go up front here?
We did a concert at one of our city parks, free concert, and encouraged everybody to bring picnics and just come out, families. And we didn't know what to expect, maybe 400, 600 people. We had over 2,000 people. So,
fantastic.
You know, really.
Fantastic.
Opera Tampa.
Right. Sorry, but you've just triggered a story. Lyric Opera Boston, are you here? Where are you here? Yeah. I surveyed the Carmen on the Common event. That was like 12 years ago now. And only in Boston would you get you an anonymous gift of $1 million. And produced a beautiful outdoor production of Carmen in the Boston Common. And I think you were expecting 10 or 15,000 each night, and you had 50,000 and 60,000. And I circulated the perimeter of this sea of people just listening. My favorite comment was, oh, if I'd known this many people would come, I would have bought a ticket. And then my other favorite was someone approaching the crowd from the street saying, I heard Oprah was here. That's civic impact. That's beautiful, beautiful civic impact. So, and you know, it's just so provocative to think, what is the long-term effect of free outdoor, can you quantify that in some way? And it's almost impossible, right? But thousands of people, or tens of thousands of people, are exposed to a form or reminded of its relevance to their lives. Okay, thank you for those excellent examples. So civic impact is a couple of things. And the first element is programs that address constituents beyond your opera house. So this is what I mean when I say owning the opera ecology. We earlier built a great list of all the ways that people experience opera outside of the opera hall. And I would say civic impact starts on your main stage with your core programs from there. So I don't ever want to suggest that it doesn't. That we're not talking about something else. We're not talking about something that can be departmentalized. Where do people experience opera in your community? What are the settings in your community that you can animate with opera? That's another way of thinking about it, as well as thinking about alternative formats. Doing 3 scenes from 3 different operas in one evening and ticketing them separately. I don't know. We have to explore different ways of offering and involving the public in opera. So I have this ongoing argument with some artistic directors about this. One of my favorite conversations was with the brilliant artistic leader Molly Smith at Arena Stage in Washington. And she said, Alan, what do you mean by owning the ecology? And I said, Molly, how do most Americans experience great drama? On television. And actually, if you think about it, in the last 10 years, the amount of excellent drama on television has mushroomed. I mean, there is great writing, great acting, riveting drama on television. And I said, Molly, why You know, when your patrons go home, they turn on the TV. And the drama they watch on television is part of their experience of the theatrical form. Of course, it's not live, but it is drama. I said, why wouldn't you recommend the best drama on television to your subscribers? I said, oh, I could never do that. Whatever. So, but that's, you know, why wouldn't you curate the opera in people's lives, in their homes and in their automobiles, and when they're exercising, where they are likely to enjoy it? Because in between operas, people go home and their lives continue and their journey through the art form continues. And the extent to which you can play a role in that arc and speed them through that arc, draw them deeper into the form, will only bring them closer to you and your organizations and to opera. The second element, preference discovery. Everyone heard this term before, preference discovery? It's one of my favorite terms now. It actually comes out of the social media world and refers to the groups of people that coalesce around an artist or an idea or a product even. I think it's very germane to us in the arts, which is how do people form preferences for art that they don't know about or dislike? We must concern ourselves with preference discovery. So self-guided preference discovery, I mean, I don't have the slides. It's hugely entertaining. But go to the LA Philharmonic's website and go through their concert master. It's a little algorithm that you can click through on their website that asks you questions about what you like and then recommends concerts for you. But the questions they ask you about have to do with, you know, who's your favorite Beatle? They show you 4 examples of wallpaper and ask you which one you like the most. I'm dying to know what the algorithm is behind that. But also the Alvin Ailey Company does this. The new artistic leader of the Ailey Company has a preference discovery app on their website. You click through, they ask you what kind of dance you like, and he recommends performances. That's self-guided discovery. Self-guided preference discovery accounts for billions of dollars of commerce on websites like Amazon, Netflix, all right? We are so vulnerable to an algorithm. Imagine how vulnerable we'd be to a person, an artist. Socially based discovery. Friends recommend art to other friends. This is how preference discovery, I believe, really happens in our culture. As people say, hey, did you hear this? I like it. And what happens then is the transference is not just the music, but the social imprimatur. If you like me, you'll like my music. Curated discovery. This is the old spinach sandwich strategy in the orchestra field. Is we're going to give you 2 war horses and something in between them that we know you won't like, but we're going to give it to you anyway, and that's curated preference discovery, right? And by and large, most audiences are happy to be guided by curators through that. And then media-based discovery, which is terrifying, which is that the reality television shows are reshaping demand for our art forms, like it or not. This is where the action is happening in our culture right now. The dance field is particularly vexed. Because the reality television shows have created a moment in our culture where dance is cool. Dance is hot, and people want to dance. What's happening stylistically, if you look at it, is you get a little bit of salsa, a little bit of ballet, a little bit of contemporary, a little bit of jazz dance It all blurs together. And the stylistic boundaries that we cling to are gone. And of course it's happening in music too. So I just wanted to bring up the term preference discovery because it's something that I hope we can continue to talk about. How do people discover a preference for opera when they don't know about it or have heard something bad about it or their friends don't listen to it, so there's no social support network? We must concern ourselves with preference discovery as an element of civic impact. Okay, you all work hard, I know, making partnerships in your communities, both within the arts and outside of the arts. But increasingly, a sign of success in the arts is the strength of your partnerships. And this is a new role. A wonderful researcher at the Curb Center at Vanderbilt, Elizabeth Long-Lingo, calls us nexus workers. We are nexus workers, going out into our communities and connecting people and organizations. And that's a new job description. I mean, whose job is it to go out in the community, right, and create these relationships that will bear fruit? Why would a museum choose to partner with a local horticulture society? These are all real examples, right? Why would a dance company choose to partner with a healthcare network? Why would a jazz presenter choose to partner with a young entrepreneurs group? Why would an orchestra partner with a film school? Or why would an opera partner with a spoken word festival? In an increasingly interdisciplinary world, partnerships will become only more and more important. If you want to look for some great examples of interdisciplinary work, look at the Creative Campus Initiative in the presenting field. There's a great deal of very exciting work happening on college campuses where college presenters are carrying this mantle of interdisciplinary work deep into their organizations and their academic institutions. Artists are coming to college campuses and working with physicists, with chemists, with engineers, scholars of all disciplines, injecting performing arts into intellectual life. It's thrilling to see what's happening, and I hope a harbinger of what's to come. Diagnostic capacity is so important. In order to have civic impact, an opera company must first be aware of its community's needs, what its community is challenged with, its aspirations, and this requires a diagnostic capacity. And it also requires accepting we do not live in a cookie-cutter world and that an opera in one community need not look like an opera in a different community. So I ask, how do you know what your community needs from you? What conversations are happening in your community that you would like to be a part of? Do you want to be a part of a conversation about bullying or about gun violence or about the role of religion in politics, whatever it is? But where can music be injected into civic discourse? This gets into the whole idea of placemaking, which I hope you're tracking. It's a critical conversation in our field today. And I would argue that everyone in an opera organization, staff, board, even audiences and musicians, can and must play an active role in the necessary work of diagnosing the community. So the best example of this I'll give you is an ongoing conversation I have with the amazing artistic director of Steppenwolf Theater in Chicago, Martha Levy, who I just respect and admire so much. Steppenwolf's metaphor for their company is that of a public square. We are a public square. And that's a really beautiful metaphor, especially for a theater company. And I say, Martha, how do you operationalize that? How do you bring that to life? And she says, well, I try to choose plays that I think will resonate with the community. And I think, that's great, and I'm sure you do. But what if you and your artistic team went out into the community just one day a year, maybe two, and you sat down with parents and religious leaders and elected officials and school leaders and you ask them, what issues define your life? What are you wrestling with every day? Not what plays should we do, but what are your needs, right? And then you took that information back into your artistic planning room and you shared with her and you said, you know what? I'd like to have a conversation with my community about gun violence or about bridging intergenerational divides or whatever your diagnosis is. And then you slowly learn to curate towards those conversations, right? To me, that's a public square. That's diagnosing need. It's not easy at all. And people will mistake it for selling out and just going out and saying, what should we do? No, that's not what I'm suggesting, right? I'm suggesting the diagnosis process gives you the information you need, and you run that through your artistic lens with knowing what your unique assets are, and then conceive programming that speaks to the community in an idiosyncratic and specific way that speaks to your community. So diagnostic capacity is a critical element of civic impact. I finished a project just earlier this year in Brooklyn with a consortium of 6 dissimilar cultural institutions: the Botanic Garden, the library, the Brooklyn Museum of Art, the Brooklyn Children's Museum, Prospect Park, and Prospect Park Zoo. Could not choose 6 more dissimilar cultural institutions, but they share a community. And we spent 2 years diagnosing community need and figuring a way that dissimilar institutions can collaborate on specific community needs. This report is just about to be released. I'm happy to share it with Opera America and perhaps make it available to you through that channel. And finally, community relevance, right? Community relevance, I would say, is actually an asset. I wish we could measure it. But community relevance is not just about asking people what they want, but about deep listening. And it cannot be achieved through advocacy or branding. A way of thinking, a way of acting, and a way that respects and acknowledges the hopes and needs and aspirations of the community as a guidepost to everything we do. The Australia Council for the Arts just launched a website devoted to community relevance, which you can access if you just Google community relevance with quotes around it, and Australia Council. The URL is cr.australiacouncil.gov.au. And I guess one of the most poignant illustrations of community relevance came from my colleague Sarah Lutman. Sarah is the formerly of American Public Media and Minnesota Public Radio. Then she was the CEO of the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra, and now she's a consultant. And she was asking in a blog, what does it mean to be embedded in a community? And she made a wonderful metaphor, wine metaphor. It's a little early for a wine metaphor, but we'll go with it. And I'm going to butcher this, so in front of Cheryl Mills, I'm going to butcher this. I'm so sorry. Vin de fort and vin de terroir. Okay. All right, Bernard. Apologies to those of you who value good French. Wines of effort and wines of place. And there's a whole backstory here which I won't share with you, but wines of effort bear the mark of the winemaker and the effort and thought that goes into making them wines of place bear the mark of their origin and are unique to their place. And I found this a very, very powerful metaphor. She was asking about it in reference to the remaking now of the Minnesota Orchestra, which, as many of you may know, was locked out for a long time. And she was just asking, what would it mean if the Minnesota Orchestra actually reflected uniquely Minnesota? And so she said, well, here's some of the attributes of Minnesota. And what would an orchestra look like if it wanted to reflect these things, these values? It's very, very provocative. And she used the word empathy and discovery. It's the uniqueness of being embedded. Requires this intimate knowledge of your community and then going out and being empathetic and trying to understand what your community is. So, civic impact is probably much more than these four things. I just took a stab at it because I wanted to open a conversation today that I hope will continue. I hope 2 years from now, we have a much better understanding of civic impact, and that all of you have an intuitive sense of what it looks like, what it feels like, where you see evidence of your civic impact as an opera company. So this is where we've come. We must own the opera ecology in a new way, and this will require us to construct a better and bigger conceptualization of who we are and what we do. Because if we only allow ourselves to be defined by our main stage work, we can never move the big needle of opera participation, which is the challenge staring us in the face as we meet today. Okay, so we're going to have a little fun now. We're going to do exercise. I ask you to consider a hypothetical situation. You're going to choose someone at your table, preferably someone you don't know, and you're going to interview them for 5 minutes, and then they're going to interview you. All right, so you are the CEO of an opera company in a mid-sized city, and your main venue horribly burns down after a big production of The Ring cycle. Sure. And unfortunately, there's no secondary venue where you can go that is suitable for opera. And you've had an emergency board meeting, and your board has said to you, come back to us with a plan for remaining vital to our community over the 4 years while we rebuild our venue. And in 5 minutes, you have to cough up a plan right now as to what you would do to ensure civic impact. So you have 5 minutes. I will blow a whistle. Then you'll turn the tables, interview the other way. Go. Ladies and gentlemen, if you could turn roles, please. If you could switch roles, I'll give you another 5 minutes. Okay. All right, folks. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to cut off your strategic planning efforts. All right. Who would like to, sorry, we just need to get order in the room here. I see that stimulated some good conversation. It's amazing what happens when you, when the status quo no longer becomes possible, what that unlocks. And this is one of my favorite exercises to do because it's sort of, you know, the rug is pulled out from under you and you can't. And actually there's a great example of this happening right now in San Francisco. Does anyone make the analogy with SF MoMA? Yeah, they're closed for renovation for a year, 2 years? Yeah. And they have to remain relevant to the community. So they have a great plan for doing that. So what were some of your ideas? Now we're going to really go around. I want to hear the good, bad, the ugly. Don't be bashful. What were some of your plans to remain relevant and vital in your community without a main hall? All right, now I'm relying on my, my runners here to select people. So go ahead, sir.
Well, we're from Amarillo Opera, and we've been bringing students in from surrounding towns, and now we want to go out to those towns. We're going to bus us there instead of them in and do at least artists and scenes. We might not be able to do a major production, but we've got 13 surrounding towns. We want to make sure that we take ourselves to them, and then within the community, going to outdoor venues like the Botanical Gardens, and we've also already done some Shakespeare in the Park and so forth in those areas, and we will go out ourselves and do small versions or more large versions, but in an area where we can get as many people as possible. Yeah.
Excellent. So your strategy is to get out, to go out and be present in smaller venues.
Right. In the winter, we want to try to share high school auditoriums, junior high auditoriums, et cetera. And the Amarillo College has the Concert Hall Theater where Amarillo Opera started 27 years ago. We would hope to be able to share that some and do that.
Great.
Paladura Canyon as well.
Thank you. Sir.
So we completely ignored what we were told to do because I'm with people from Chicago. Very, very pushy. So what we decided to do was absolutely capitalize on the moment. People love crisis for the period of time that it happens and then forget about it quickly. So what we're trying to do is turn our whole city into the water carriers for saving their opera company. So we're going to be doing events. We're going to be continually doing events, maybe one very large outdoor event, several non-site specific events. I've been to many, many opera performances in wonderful non-site specific places, do series of concerts, and all the things that is our artistic product. But we're also going to make the conversation about why it's important for the city. And we believe that if you can get your board carrying that water, and then, you know, taxi drivers, your hashtags, save Midtown Opera.
Sorry, are you making a Chicago water tower metaphor?
I'm making all sorts of metaphors here.
Shamelessly turning their misfortune into a crowdfunding opportunity.
I'm from Houston, so it's not, that isn't what I was actually doing, but apparently I am. But no, and really try and make the conversation about why it's important to save your opera company and keep that conversation going while because you're going to need two sources of funding. You're going to need to rebuild your building, and you're going to need to carry on doing artistic product to keep you relevant in your community.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. Where are we over here? Young, right here. Please introduce yourself, if you would.
Hi, I'm Stacy Brightman from LA Opera, and we'll take wonderful advantage of it to break out of the box and do our freeways project, where we will conduct hundreds of story circles up and down all the freeways communities around Los Angeles, which are essentially our rivers, our arteries, and we will use those story circles to create original libretti with LA-based artists, commissioning operas that in fact are meant to be performed in communities and environmental spaces all over the town.
So you're using this misfortune as a springboard for a new artistic impulse.
Tapping into the root system of our community, of stories, of ideas, of musics, of rhythm, of tempi.
And are you an artistic administrator?
Education and Community Engagement Director.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's hear from someone over here. Yes.
Laura Hudman with the Santa Fe Opera. What's most interesting about this to me is this is, as I think most all of us agree, is an incredible PR opportunity to convert people who have never even been introduced to our art form to it. And very much what you were sharing, it's opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. Take advantage of the opportunity. Out of tragedy, we can help strengthen this art form by silly, simple things, introducing newcomers. Show up, bring your artists to a karaoke bar. Imagine they walk up to the microphone, all shy, and they sing. And everyone in the room is just absolutely amazed that they've never heard anything like this before. As I was sharing with Mari, I have friends from time to time who will say, please forgive, I've never been to an opera. I don't really like opera. But so how do they know that they don't like it when they've never been?
Yeah.
So this is an incredible opportunity for recitals and such. Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Let's go to the middle of the room right down here. I see a gentleman with his hand up. Sir, in the red shirt. Yep. Got it. There you go.
Hi, I'm Jeff Harwood. I'm an independent stage manager, not connected to any company. One of the ideas I came up with was partnering with social justice, racial inequality, gender inequality community organizations within the community, walking up to them and saying, okay, what is an issue that you're trying to build in this community, partnering with them for, in Memphis where I live, we have a bus riders union. The bus system, pretty much for any southern town, was created to bus black workers to their white jobs. And that has not been, that has not been updated for today. Working with the bus riders union and saying, okay, what can we do? Maybe a song cycle for talking about Selma, and working with them to find an alternative space where their people and the people who need to make decisions can.
So giving this beautiful idea is our voices are silenced, but we will awaken your voices for some time. That's a beautiful idea. Let's see some other hands. I know you're out there. How about right here?
So I'm Malia Taranja with Utah Symphony Utah Opera. And presumably if your opera house has burned down, then it also kicks out your ballet company, your repertory theater, and other arts organizations. So I would see it as a great opportunity to combine resources with your fellow arts patriarchs in your city and get creative about what new ways that collectively you can be impacting your community in smaller venues throughout. And the other piece of it is, my education director is right here at the table next to me, but we have a massive education program with our current opera where we have 5 resident artists that hit every school building in the state of Utah on a 3 to 5 year rotation. And without doing major main stage productions, I would probably quadruple that program and really focus on the Wasatch Front where about 75% of our population lives.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. Let's go over here to the gentleman with his hand up here.
Hi, I'm Braden Tone. I'm a conductor in New York. Maybe because I'm a New Yorker, one of the things I thought would you could do a performance as a benefit for the firefighters who helped to put out the blaze, possibly at a fire station. And make it a benefit for them instead of showing what you so desperately need. Show how grateful you are for them being there.
Right.
The other thing that I thought would really be fun would, at least once a year over the next 4 years, do an outdoor performance at the construction site for your new opera house, so that the audiences would get to come and see the progress every year. And that would get them all excited about wanting to be in the house when it's finally built, because they're now invested year by year in the progress, which is going to improve your audience once the house opens.
That's great. Thank you. That's beautiful. So, you know, you talk about community responsiveness. One of the greatest examples of that in recent memory was what the arts community did after 9/11 to help our communities grieve and just process what had happened. And it happened very quickly, in weeks. And it was a great illustration of the reflexive muscle we have, but don't use very often for a lot of good reasons. But I love your illustration of having recognizing the firefighter. That's such a great idea. Okay, a couple more. Do we have someone over here? Yes, sir.
Ned Canty with Opera Memphis. We also, both of us actually shared a lot of the same ideas that other people have shared, but since this is a great opportunity to make sure that in 4 years, the audience that shows up is a new audience, really to try to make sure that everything's pointing towards that. One of the specifics that we talked about was to commission a new work, as people said, but to make that the thing that would open the new Opera House. Something that was very Memphis specific, that we could spend the whole first year just listening and getting a sense of what is the theme that's going to really connect to the largest number of people.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, one last comment. Leah, your choice.
Thanks, Leah. Catherine Simsesson from the Canadian Opera Company. We had many of the similar ideas shared already, but one of the things that we also thought was in building of the Opera House to ensure that the partnerships and the learning that happened over the 4 years continue in the actual building of the house. So be it accessibility, be it open spaces, be it the actual physical structure of this new Opera House will reflect 4 years of learning and working with new partnerships, new venues, and continue that dialogue and that excitement.
Excellent, thank you. So here's a pack of matches, folks. Right. What happens when you suspend your assumptions and are released into an alternate reality where you can consider a new set of assumptions? And it's amazing how creative and committed you are to this idea of being relevant and being vibrant and being responsive to your communities. You've just heard it. It's here, it's in the room. We just have to figure out how to get it out. I would never wish anyone the misfortune of fire, but for planning purposes, I encourage you to use this as an exercise, as a way of kind of freeing your thinking about civic impact. Okay, so today, hopefully, is the beginning of a longer conversation. We've talked about artistic vibrancy and civic impact as two intertwined, interdependent ideas about who we are and what we do. Read more when the Arts Council England report comes out. That'll be one resource. The Australian Council websites are another resource. But I just encourage you to think about, particularly if you're moving into a strategic planning cycle, to think about adopting a framework or frameworks for these things as a way to guide the conversation and keep yourselves focused on what matters. The third leg of the stool that we've not talked about today is capitalization, is ensuring that you have the capital, that you're appropriately capitalized to have the artistic vibrancy that you want and to make the civic impact that you want. And of course that's important. That's another session. We won't do that today. So I hope I'll just give you a preview. Been in conversations with Mark and Leah and the Opera America folks about how to continue this conversation. We've been trading ideas, and one of the ideas we've come up with is sort of a 2-year program of research and learning that might start with understanding what are we doing now to engage our communities. And we heard some great examples today, but codifying that and making that available to everyone in the field so we can start with a good understanding of where we are. And then doing some sort of fun, scalable research exercises where you, all of you in your communities, would do some interviewing, initially with patrons, and asking them about the ecology. What are all the ways you experience opera, and those in your family, and constructing this understanding of the ecology kind of from the ground up, and then also doing an exercise with stakeholders where be working with a pilot cohort initially, defining who are your stakeholders, who in your community has a stake in you, and who do you have a stake in, and going out and talking to those people and asking them, what value do you get from our company now, and what value are you not getting that you would like to get? And those conversations, you can imagine how animated those would be. And then moving into a second year where we would actually develop a civic impact audit or an assessment process that you could do to just take stock of your civic impact to bring this forward. So it's been a wonderful opportunity chatting with you all this morning. I hope I put a few bees in your bonnet about a couple of things, and I look forward so much to the opportunity to meet with you over the next couple of years. So thank you. Have a great day.